Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Professor Ed Wilding. I'm the Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor for Academic Excellence, and I'm a member of the School of Psychology. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you today, colleagues, friends, and family, to celebrate with John his inaugural lecture. This may be a slightly shorter introduction than some inaugural lectures, and the reason for that is that John is going to talk about his career pathway, and he doesn't want me to say too much about it because that'll be half of his presentation out the window. So what I am allowed to say is that John completed his PhD here in 2005 and then rejoined us as a lecturer, assistant professor in new terms in 2011. He was then promoted to associate professor in 2014 and was promoted to full professor in 2023. John is the first member of psychology to be promoted to full professor on the education focus route. John is also a principal fellow of Advanced HE, which is a national accrediting body. There are only 10 members of our institution who are principal fellows of Advanced HE, speaking to his status and esteem as a leader in education. John, of course, has served in many roles during the time he's been with us. I'll give you a flavor of some of them here. He served as a year tutor, Director of Undergraduate Studies, Deputy Director of Undergraduate Programs with responsibility for careers and access and participation, Assessments Officer, and I think an entertaining period, it's fair to say, as Head of Education. He's currently our lead for our college in widening participation, or more broadly, access, participation, and progression. At least as importantly, he's the go-to person in the school for DIY and car-related questions. And it would be remiss of me if I didn't also mention that John is currently top of the school fantasy football league. Over the years, John has supervised a number of PhD students and mentored a number of junior colleagues and peers, and I can attest personally to the careful and assiduous way in which he looks after colleagues and thinks about the development of their careers. John's research is inherently interdisciplinary, and he really values the fact that he works with colleagues and peers from across the institution. And that journey and the value that he gets from working with colleagues in very different disciplines to answer a range of questions related to education, but also fundamental psychological questions, is something that he's going to be picking up in the course of his talk today. I'd like to invite you to join me in welcoming John to his inaugural lecture.
Okay, just do a mic check. Give me a wave at the back if you can hear me. That's what I usually say. Thank you. So firstly, some thank yous. Ed, firstly, thank you to you for a very generous and kind introduction. And I'd like to come back to you with thank yous at the end as well. Thank you for everyone that's come here today. Thank you for those that are watching online, or some family who couldn't be here today or are watching online. Thank you for those that have come some distance. So I know someone's come from all the way from Cambridge today. Thank you very much for making efforts to be here. Thank you for being here to our councillor Grindrod at the back. Thank you for taking time out of your particularly busy time of year at the moment to be with us. Thank you. And also a special thank you to my two daughters who have taken time out of their very busy social calendar to be here to see their dad today. So thank you for being here. My remit for today's talk was twofold. One was make it accessible, and two, try and keep it short. Okay, so we'll try on that one. Now, on the first one, I've got an apology to start with, because in terms of accessibility, if you are under the age of 30, my cultural references might not go too well with you. I've probably got one that might work with you, and I'm going to start with that one, okay? And that's to do with Marvel movies. Okay, I think I'm safe there. So Marvel movies, all good Marvel movies, they have a kind of origin kind of story, don't they? So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with an origin story. So here we go. So when people ask me where I come from, where I was born, I'm often a little bit vague, because I kind of grew up in two different, different parts of the country. But when people say, well, where were you born? I often say I was born in East London. And I do that, when I think about why I do that because I think it adds a certain kind of edginess to what I do, I think. Born in East London, I quite like that. But actually, when I was growing up, I didn't see myself as being in East London. I actually saw myself as being in Romford, which is in Essex. So I'm actually a bit of an Essex boy really, but keep that between us. So I was there till the age of 12, and while I was there, many of you know that I have a real love for cars, and while I was there, my parents were very generous, and I actually got my first car when I was growing up in Romford, as you can see there. It's my first Alfa Romeo there. I have to say, just to say that these photos are not self-selected. I asked my mum if she could send me some, and she chose these. So for better or worse, they're not chosen by me. So there we are in Romford to the age of 12. It's an interesting place. It wasn't particularly culturally diverse. And then at the age of 12, my parents made the decision to take me from one relatively cultural, kind of desolate place to another cultural wasteland of Lincolnshire. And from the age of 12, I wasn't even in a village called Stickford. I was between two villages called Stickford and Stickney. Now, as you can imagine how it sounds, not much happened around those areas. In fact, I think I remember in one of the local newspapers, I think one of the headlines once was "Dead Mole Found in Field." That was like kind of the excitement that we had there. So this was kind of the end of the 80s, and we had fun. I had fun with my brother and sister kind of growing up on the farm, but it was quite culturally kind of desolate. Felt like I was waiting for something at the end of the 80s. So I felt like I was waiting for something to happen. And then it did happen. And in came the 90s. So a little bit of kind of participation here, if you can think about what these represent. So we've got some themes from the 90s. So anyone here know what this one is? Nirvana, brilliant. A bit more tricky. Brilliant. Oh, yeah, okay. So lots happening here, my lifelong bromance with Keanu Reeves started with Point Break. And then I was really influenced by a book by Douglas Coupland by Generation X, which kind of fits in with this whole kind of feeling. And if we focus on one of these, this is Nirvana, Nevermind, going to focus on one of the songs there, which Smells Like Teen Spirit. Now, this phrase became especially famous due to Nirvana's 1991 song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, which was an anthem for the grunge movement and symbolized disillusionment and counterculture spirit of Generation X. Now, where did it come from? The story goes that one of Kurt Cobain's girlfriends, just for a joke, went to his bedroom and scrawled graffiti on his wall, just sprayed on his wall. And she did it as a joke to mock him, because at the time in America, there was a brand of deodorant called Teen Spirit, which everyone knew was a little bit ropey. It's a bit like Lynx Africa or something like that now. Forgive me if you use that, but so it wasn't really good. So she did it to mock him, really, but he didn't realize this. And he kind of took this on board, thought it was cool. He thought, Teen Spirit, that's cool. So he thought it was actually a compliment. And it grew from that, and it started to refer to this carefree, rebellious and passionate essence, often associated with a teenage life. So it embodies youthful energy, defiance against societal norms, and a quest for identity and freedom. It's about intense emotions experienced that come with growing up, marked by mixed independence, exploration, and important risk-taking. So that's the theme, and we will come back to that. So then, in the mid-90s, I left Stickney and Stickford, and I moved to Birmingham to do my undergraduate degree. Now, I'm going to pause a little bit there, because I was the first in my family to go to university, and it had a profound effect on me. So those 3 years really, really changed my life. I wanted just to say that's one of the reasons why I'm really, really passionate about the kind of wider participation system that we do within university. I think genuinely it's something the university does do well. They put lots of time and energy into trying to expand the type of people that come to university, people that haven't come before, people a bit like me. And I came to university, and I was very naive. I was socially naive. I was culturally naive. As you'll see in the next picture, I was also sartorially naive as well. I'm not quite sure what I was doing there. I think it might be like a kind of maybe a proto kind of Harry Potter type look I was going for. I'm not sure. John, who is here now after 30 years, had a little bit more hair there, but you're looking much more cool there than I was. So came to Birmingham, quite a life-changing time during those 3 years. But also what was happening there was Again, a cultural move. So we had Britpop happening as well. This is the next move. And again, it was a time of vibrance. Like you see people smiling there because they remember these times. I remember very distinctly one summer evening coming along, walking past the Guild and hearing Blur Girls and Boys coming up there. And it's really kind of stuck in my mind. It was a kind of, yeah, definitely a special time. So that was going on at the same time. After my 3-year degree, I moved to Cambridge to study at Homerton College. So I decided that I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something practical, and I wanted to kind of go out into the world. I wanted to get some practical skills. So I thought I would become a teacher. So I did teacher training there, and I can't really believe I actually did this, but I became a maths teacher now. It seems like another lifetime ago, but I'm actually a qualified maths teacher. I forget sometimes. So I became a teacher. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that was I wanted to travel. I wanted to go and do some adventures and get out into the world and do some traveling. I was very fortunate. For a while, I lived in Amman in Jordan and did lots of kind of traveling around northern kind of Egypt and Israel, worked for a number of NGOs and charities out there as well. And it was a really formative time for me in that I worked a lot with Palestinian and Sudanese refugees as well. So it really, yeah, it was very formative and shaped my kind of, I think, worldviews in many ways. After that little adventure, I made a decision to come back to Birmingham and study for a PhD. And I was working with Professor Bob Johnston, and my PhD was actually in psycholinguistics. And rather grandly, I named my PhD Age of Acquisition, a Unified Theory. I thought that sounded very, very cool. I remember writing it, being quite nervous about it, and letting my supervisor read it and being a bit nervous about submitting it, but whether it was kind of really, really perfect how I wanted it. He sat me down, he said, John, don't take this the wrong way, but you do realize that apart from you and me and the external examiner, maybe the internal examiner, I'm not sure anyone else will ever read this. And I thought, oh, wow. That could be true. But anyway, for me, it was grand. It was a unified theory. So this was my beginning, my starting point in terms of research. I wanted just to highlight a little bit what this means. I didn't want to jump over this. So what does age of acquisition mean? Age of acquisition is really about how we process information, and how the age we acquire the information impacts on us. So I'm going to show you 2 pictures now, and I want you to just name them in your head, okay? To just slightly name them. So here's the first picture, and here's the second picture. Now, you might think that the second picture, because you see it all the time, actually you could name that more quickly than the first picture, which maybe you don't see so much anymore. But actually, what we find is those items and objects that you see and encode earlier in life, actually even later in life, you're more quick to access information about them, whether that's their name or something about some meaning about them, some semantics about them, or something about their kind of pictorial images as well. And that was the main thrust of my research. And the prevailing theory around the time was that actually we must view these processes a bit like a neural network, and early patterns, early things that we see come in and they set the neural network. They almost become hardwired, so that when new things come in, it's more difficult to kind of set their patterns in there. And that way, the newer items kind of set the framework before the older ones come in. So even in later life, we're quicker in naming those early ones. So it's really emphasized the importance of early experiences because they stay with us and they shape our cognition. They shape the way that we think. Coming back to this naming of things, so here's like a very, very basic way of thinking about naming. So at the top, we've got a picture of a dog. We access semantic information about the dog. It's got a tail, fur, 4 legs. We then pick up lexical representations, and then we actually say what the word is. And within my PhD, what I tried to do was mesh these 2 things together and say, well, perhaps all these connections between these levels of representation are like neural networks. And actually, the more that you have to go through the system, the more of this age of acquisition effect that you get, this gap between naming early and late acquired items. And that's what we found. If you ask someone to say if something has got fur or not, and you show them pictures, you will get this age of acquisition effect. But if you ask them to actually name it, the effect is much bigger. So you get this kind of gradual increase in this AOA effect as you go through the processes that you are necessitated to do different tasks. So if the word rhymes with bat, that's at this level. If I ask you to name it, it's here. Has it got fur? It's here. And that was pretty much my my PhD, was really merging those together and trying to put together a cohesive explanation of how these things work within responses to pictures and words. After finishing my PhD, I was very fortunate to get a post at the University of Worcester as a lecturer there. I worked there for 7 years. It was a great place to work. It was a really good place in terms of training for my first role. It was very much teaching focused, so lots of emphasis on education within it. But while I was there, I took a little stepping stone piece of research towards a slightly different field. So I did a bit of work with some colleagues there, looking at the effect of age of acquisition on older individuals with and without cognitive impairments. So we know that as we get older, unfortunately, we do get a little bit slower in our cognitions. Even I'm feeling that a little bit now. And that's normal and that's fine. But actually, some people do go on and to have what we call mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. So we looked at these different groups, looked at young people, and older people with mild cognitive impairment. And this is what we found. We found that at all stages, we find this age of acquisition effect. So in the young control, you find it. But as you get older, in older people, this effect gets larger. And then if you come to people who've got MCI, then this effect is even larger still, significantly larger still. And so we looked at whether or not this could be even a way of screening really for people that may possibly go on to other stages of dementia as well. So it's quite exciting for me. The first time I was working with that kind of cohort and participant sample, and it definitely was moving me more towards that kind of direction. After 6.5 years at Worcester, which was a good training ground for me, I came back to Birmingham. First of all, that was in the old Franklin building. And then when we moved from there, it was into 50 Pritchards Road in the beginning of 2018. And there's lots of changes happening at that time, not just moving buildings, but thinking about some of the things that impacted me the most in terms of the direction I've gone with my research. I think I picked out 2. And one of them was that a couple of years after I returned, I was given the opportunity to take part in some CBT training. Now, bear with me. I've had fun here with ChatGPT. This is me. I've asked it to show me a picture of friendly CBT trainers. And there you go. Now, what I have to say is, do you not think this gentleman here looks a little bit like our very own Gerald Rawdon, just sat there? Definitely some similarities there. So yeah, this is just really a thanks to Jed and Rich and the team. So after they let me on the program, I managed to do my kind of CBT training and PG dip there, and they're very generous, and the team there is still going, and it's a brilliant program there. But it did push me more into the areas of mental health, and I did look around at the people that were close to me, and the majority of them were young people and students. I thought, well, that's, I think, a direction that I want to go. The other thing that happened was I was fortunate enough to get an ESRC grant with some great people. So we've got Yet that's over in the corner there, Katrine, and our PhD student, Emma, who I'm hoping is online at the moment. She's now down at Bristol. And we started working with older adults. We did one study where we were looking at whether brain trainers can actually have long-term effects on older people's cognition and improve cognition, or at least slow down reduction in cognition. But also when we started, it was bang in the middle of the COVID pandemic. So we also did some other research, just looking at health worries, physical activity, and mental health in older adults. We did some survey questions as well. And some of the interesting findings we found from this, and again, this is just showing the pathway that I took into working within mental health, was looking at what affects depression here. So here is what I thought was some interesting ones. So here we've got depression. We've got significant, we know we've got lots of comorbidity between depression and anxiety, but loneliness, a big predictor there, social network important, and then also physical activities. That was, again, something that I felt really interested and wanted to go down that pathway, and yet it's very much in that focus as well. So there were two things that kind of pushed me in that direction. And so for the last kind of 8 or 9 years, I've been really focusing much more on the mental health of the young people around us. So a couple of papers I've got there. So they're looking at the influence of perfectionism, self-esteem and resilience on young people's mental health. And I'll come back to resilience in a moment. And looking at psychological and lifestyle predictors of mental health in higher education. Think about how healthy our students are. And again, look at that more broadly in a moment. One of the, what I thought was important bits of research that we did kind of during the COVID pandemic is we looked at cohorts of young people, of students, before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, and looked at monitoring various factors related to their mental health and other aspects as well. So the first data we took, and we didn't know this was going to happen, the first data we took was in January 2020, so it was just before COVID hit. Second one was in January 2021, so it was pretty much in the kind of mix of lockdowns and things like that. And then 2022 was pretty much considered post-COVID. So I'm just going to give you some graphs up here to show you the kind of things that we found, and hopefully you'll see how this links later on when I kind of link it back to the idea of team spirit. So the first thing we found there is kind of what you'd expect. So social support, all going really well and normal, January 2020, goes down significantly in 2021 because we've got lockdowns, and then bounces back in 2022. So the kind of things that you would expect there. However, a little bit more unexpected is that depression levels significantly increased in 2021, which you would expect given what everyone was going through, but continued to increase in 2022 as well. When we've gone through lockdown, we're kind of post-COVID. So that was a surprise to me. Other things that we found was that self-esteem went down in 2021, but continued to go down in 2022 as well. And we know that self-esteem is kind of a, can be seen as kind of transdiagnostic in that it's not a diagnosis in itself, but actually it can be linked to mental health problems, whether that's depression or anxiety. This is, for me, a really important one. 2020 to 2021, our measure of resilience didn't change. Okay, so resilience didn't change. This is the really tough time here, but it didn't really go down. But after everything settled, it significantly went down. So I'm going to come back to that moment. If you can remember that bit there on resilience. Paired with that, we did a really large sample survey post-pandemic. We did some quantitative data gathering and some qualitative data gathering as well. I just want to highlight one thing from that. And this shows here a larger set, over almost 800 young people. These are the proportions of people that we classified as having moderate to severe or severe anxiety, or moderate to severe or severe depression. I know we've got Ed Day somewhere here, who's our resident psychiatrist, so he'll know what these figures like, or what they're like compared to the population as a whole. What I will say is this is high. This is much, much higher than you'd expect in the general population as a whole. So thinking about that, how do we draw this all together? So I want to look at the qualitative data now. So when talking to our young people, what did we find? What we found was that they feel much more pressured than maybe I did when I was their age. There's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more to be anxious about. And I think we have other people like Gerald, who does research in this area as well, who's very, very keen on this. We know that they worry about existential kind of problems. They worry about jobs. They worry about health. They worry about finance. And there's a lot more pressure on this generation. So having to cope with a lot more than maybe I did. But also going back to this idea of resilience as well. What we found when talking to these young people is that the kind of things that they used to be able to cope with because they were just normal everyday life things that happen, now had a really big impact on them. And I want to think about this idea of resilience a bit like a reservoir. So rather than a trait that we have or we don't have, as a reservoir that we have within us. And what they were finding, what we found here, that when trouble struck, when COVID struck, that reservoir held for a while, and they coped with it, and they did okay. But after, when they got to 2022, it's almost like that reservoir had gone. It'd been used, the defense mechanism had been used, and it just dropped, like we found. And that's what we found when we were talking to the students. they were just more worried about things that they weren't worried about before. Things that hadn't caused them anxiety before did now. This isn't because they're kind of in any way weak in any way. It's just that they'd gone through these things and that there were more external pressures happening as well. I haven't got time to go into the role of social media on that, but obviously it's a hot topic at the moment. That's something that I didn't have in my generation. And they talked about the pressures of that as well. Not being able to close the door when they went home to their flat or home or whatever, but that it was always there. It's permissive, it's there all the time. And the other thing that really came through that I felt was quite sad was that this idea of being 18 to 25 and having teen spirit seemed to have really reduced. There was odd one or two there that had this still, but it seemed to have gone. And it was sad, this idea of being carefree. They seemed really anxious about what was going on in life. This idea of having exploration and risk-taking. Actually, the majority didn't want to take risks. They wanted certainty in what was going on. It's understandable thinking about what they've been through and the pressures that they're under today. But that's where I wanted to link in terms of, I think this is something that in some ways has been lost. I think it can be regained again, but because of societal and cultural kind of aspects that have happened in the last, say, 5 to 10 years or so, it is much harder. And it's sad to see that this idea is kind of definitely kind of withered away, or at least reduced. Okay, so that's the past. Now, got 10 minutes or so, I'm going to look towards the present. So thinking about current projects, I'm going to say interdisciplinarity is the exciting bit. It's the bit that I really, really love. It's the bit that most of my research is involved with. You'll see that I asked ChatGPT to show me a happy picture represents doing specific research. And amazingly, this is actually just like my lab looks like. When I go to my lab, this is what it looks like all the time. People all the time, everyone's cheerful, things floating around as well. We have great fun. So I just want to highlight 3 projects that I'm kind of involved with at the moment. And the first is working with Carissa and the gang at the back and working on cross-training with psychology and theology academics. I changed this because to start with, I put training theologians. I thought that's not right. That's not what's been happening. Then I put educating theologians. I thought, no, I'm going to get in trouble for that but actually it's not. It has been cross-training because as part of this project, Carissa had a grant from Templeton Foundation, and we have been able to work together. And I have done some training in terms of with theologians in terms of trying to kind of convey some of the skills involved in terms of doing research in psychology, and also some of the themes that we kind of work with and the paradigms we work with. And that's been great. But actually it has been cross-training because I've learned so much from you guys as well. Some of the things that you talk about really blow my mind. It's been really helpful in terms of the way that you talk about faith and the way you talk about individuals and how they relate to faith and the kind of things about kind of image of God as well. Some of the things you talk about I've never encountered before. So it's been brilliant for me. It's really expanded the way that I think as well. So it really has been cross-training. So thank you for that. And that's been brilliant to be involved with. So Carissa, thank you for involving me with that as well. The second one that I'm working on at the moment I wanted to highlight is called Microcosm. And it comes from the Gut Microbiome and Cognition in Submariners project. And I didn't put this together, but it was quite clever. They've kind of shortened that into Microcosm. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. So I've called this initially Planes, Trains, and Submarines, because it does feel like we do a lot of kind of driving around and commuting around the country to get to these different places. So this is some research that we're undertaking at the moment with the Royal Navy. And I'm working with Andy Bagshaw and a number of people from biosciences and also from the Navy as well. Before I go into that, just to say what we've been traveling. So a couple of weeks back, we went down to the Institute of Naval Medicine, which is down here. And before that, we've been at Porton Down, which some of you might have heard about. And that's at the end there, we've got where the submarines leave and are based at Faslane. What I'd say is that I didn't really appreciate just how high the security would be at these places. So I probably should have known. But on this one here, as we went in, they gave us this red badge that we had to wear. And we were told that at all times we had to be in line of sight of someone from security, which was quite intense. And I wasn't quite sure this was great. It went okay during the day until Andy Smiley, now, here's what I'm going to say, until we wanted to go to the bathroom, and then things became interesting, but we won't go into that. And then 2 weeks ago, I went to this one as well. This one was great. Again, relatively high security, a little bit less secure, I think. And it was all going very well until in the afternoon, I thought I'll leave one of the talks that are there because I was feeling a bit sleepy. I thought I'll go out and get some air. Went out. It's a beautiful day. So I stood outside for 10 minutes or so. I think this is great. Thought I better go back in now. Realised that actually, of course, this is a secure building. I can't get back in now. So I had to just wing it a little bit, pretending that I wanted to be out there until a nice naval person came along and let me back in. But yes, it's been a great project. And to go into a little bit more detail about what we're actually doing now. So this is a naval joke that I have stolen. So this is the scope of the study, and that's a scope. Okay. Sorry, there you go. So the scope of the study is that we are looking at the impact of being on patrol on submariners, and we're looking at the impact on their mental health, on their microbiome, and on their sleep as well. So I'll just pause to say a little bit more about how this works. So these submariners are just amazing individuals. They set off in the nuclear submarine, and they basically submerge and they disappear under the waves for maybe 4 or 5 months, and they don't come up. No one knows where they are. They don't know where they are. They can't have any kind of communication at all. If you imagine if you were on holiday in a caravan for 4 months and you couldn't get out, it's a bit like that. They go down. So they're amazing individuals, but because you can imagine there's lots of stresses that are there as well. They have a very strange system where they have a 6-hour watch pattern. So you're awake for 6 hours working, then you're supposed to be asleep or doing other things for 6 hours, and you're back on for 6 hours. So it really messes up your sleep cycle. So this is the first study within the UK where we're actually we're looking at measurements of mental health, looking at measurements of risk-taking as well, which is quite important when we're on a nuclear submarine. Andy's heading up the kind of measures of sleep and how that kind of break in the circadian rhythm impacts on their sleep. And then my colleague Willem in biosciences is looking at their microbiome. For those that haven't come across this before, these are the billions and billions of bugs that you have within your kind of tummy, as it were, and your gastrointestinal system. We know more and more this can have an impact on lots of different factors of life. And you can imagine how we're doing this. They're in a submarine, and we have to take samples that we then kind of put in a freezer, and they then come back. Unfortunately, someone other than me has to then analyze that kind of data. I just do the mental health stuff. I'm not down the GUI end, as it were. That's someone else. But it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant to be part of this. Great to work with just really super bright people. And also just working with people in the Navy as well. It's a totally different world, and I've learned so much through them. And I'd also say that people in the Navy have the best and coolest titles as well. So at the moment, we're working with someone who is called Surgeon Commander. I think that's pretty good. I quite like that. I think Commander Catling would work well. Might even swap the prof for that. But yeah, as I say, they're great to working with, and this is ongoing now, and waiting for the next set of data to go in. But again, a good example of interdisciplinary work. And lastly, I'm going to just bring up the work that that's undergoing at the moment. So I've been working with members of the School of Psychology, working with people from clinical psychology, working with people from the CBT program, working with my colleague Arta, who's been heading up all the kind of IT stuff for this. And what we're creating at the moment is a virtual CBT counselor based on OpenAI software. So we're kind of developing something with OpenAI. And what we're looking to do is not to replace counselors, but to think about the gap in provision of mental health care. So at the moment, if a young person is referred for talking therapies, there's usually quite a big gap between that referral and actually going to see someone. And that might be up to 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on what part of the country that you're in. So what we're looking at is using CB techniques within this kind of platform. So young people can be potentially given this as a kind of fill-in really for that time. And that will then hopefully then lead into the actual formal counselling that's going on. So at the moment, we've been testing lectures with a number of people, got a few outside organisations that are interested as well. And we're hoping in September to do our first kind of random RCT trial for this as well. Okay. So I said I'd keep it brief, and hopefully I have on that. But I want to spend a little bit of time now just saying some thank yous. Now, sometimes on these slides, you put people's names up, and I was so worried about missing someone, I haven't put anyone's name up, okay? So I'm just going to say some thank yous on there. What I'd say is, so I'm going a bit off script now. This is the unscripted bit. That I have good and bad days at work, but generally, I really love my job. And there are many reasons for that. And some things I do, I've highlighted on there, some of the reasons why I really like what I do. But the bottom line is, I really love my job because of the people that I work with. And that's the thing that really makes it for me. And I was thinking about all the different people that I meet, all the different impacts that people have. And I just wanted to kind of bring some examples up of why it makes it special for me. And I was thinking, just in the last year or so, what some experiences that I've had. And it is about the people. It's about the tutee that I had, who after Christmas came to talk to me and told me all about the adventures they'd have trying to get home because they lived in Kyiv. And there's me thinking about all the stresses I'd had at kind of commuting home for Christmas. And they just told me about what happened and what it was like when they got home. I was just taken aback by that. It was really, really special. It's about the PhD students that you have who come in with just brilliant ideas, so young, so enthusiastic, and you're there as their mentor. But after a year or two, you get a sneaky suspicion that actually they know so much more than you. It's about that PhD student who takes pity on you and comes to help you and show you how to use the new core finance system we've got here. Emma, if you're online now, thank you. I really miss you. It's about the leaders that we have here. So the leaders, good leaders. I realize that makes a massive difference to our working environment. It's those leaders that can look beyond your potential weaknesses and I really believe in you. So thank you. But mostly it's about my colleagues and my friends. Hold it, it's gonna hit. It's those that are there for you when you're having a bad day. It's those that give you a hug when you're obviously a bit anxious and nervous about something that's happening there later on in the day. It's about those that share those joys with you as well. It's great to see the kind of the seasons of life that go through. Got a little young one here that's kind of been born relatively recently. And it's those who share the sadnesses when we see kind of older ones pass away as well. That's really special. It's those people that indulge me when I go on and on about stories about my daughters. They're there as well. It's those that just make you laugh and kind of pick you up when you're having a bad day. But it's just those that stand by you really and support you in the work that you do. And I'm really privileged to work with you all. So I'd like to end by saying thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for listening today. Thank you.
It's amazing. Oops. So I'll just get that. Hello, everyone. I'm Suzanne Higgs, and I'm head of the School of Psychology. And it really is a privilege to be able to deliver the vote of thanks for Professor Jonathan Catling's inaugural lecture today. So we know that it really is a lovely occasion when we can get together with family, friends and colleagues and celebrate this real milestone. And it's really been a wonderful lecture. So just thinking about the scope of John's lecture today, he's given this really amazingly engaging overview of his academic journey. And I did like the fact that it was punctuated, and I am speaking for myself here, with a very nostalgic trip down music lane, not of my student days, actually. It's sort of later than that. But anyway, thank you, John. So we've heard about his PhD research and how that explored why words that we learn early in life are named more quickly than those that are acquired later. And heard about, you know, the way in which this work has developed, so leading ultimately to his interest in cognition in older adults, with this fascinating finding that he told us about, that these early learned names are much more resilient to the general slowing of naming speed that comes with cognitive aging. And then we've also heard about how then that research into cognition in older adults has expanded into a broader exploration of mental health and well-being. And that's across different age groups, more recently focusing on youth mental health. So I think we've really got a sense today of how John has really combined his absolute dedication to education with also his passion for research. And we've heard about how he's tried to understand these key predictors of mental health, academic achievement in student populations. So this journey really has been very rich and varied, and you know, involved some amazing collaborations, you know, moving from language, psycholinguistics to theology, and then even the microbiome. So really fascinating. But for me, I think a key thing to take away is that John's lecture has really demonstrated what an inspiring educator he is. So we've had that in spades today, but also I want to echo the fact that, of course, John is a really patient, kind and supportive teacher who's really valued by his students. And not only that, his generosity for sharing his expertise and his commitment to developing and mentoring and supporting a huge number of colleagues is really amazingly well appreciated within our school. So thank you, John. Perhaps one other takeaway from the lecture, I think we can say, is the undeniable pull that Birmingham seems to hold for him, since he keeps trying to leave, but then coming back again at various points. So maybe we can say that actually Birmingham is part of John's spirit, and for that we're very grateful. So before I close in thanking John again for sharing his journey with us today, just to remind you that there is a certificate at the front, and we'd be very grateful if you could sign that if you haven't done so already. And you're all very welcome to continue the celebrations and enjoy some refreshments, which is going to be at the Lapworth Museum. And if anybody's not sure how to get there, I'm sure there will be plenty of people who can lead the way. So finally, then, I would like to thank John once again for his wonderful lecture. And please join me in our gratitude. Thank you. Well done, Paul.